Scope and Standards of Practice of the Nurse Educator, updating the core competency checklist of the nurse educator at Sinai Hospital. My practicum is at Sinai Hospital of Baltimore under the preceptorship of a nurse educator at the Education Resource Center. Sinai Hospital was founded in 1866 as the Hebrew hospital during Civil War, a Jewish-sponsored healthcare organization providing care for people in Greater Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and its surrounding communities. Sinai Hospital is part of LifeBridge Health System, an integrated healthcare system, nonprofit tertiary hospital with 504 beds, also called as a teaching hospital because of its expertise of academic system. Accreditations and certifications include ANCC Magnet designation and the Joint Commission. The Education Resource Center is where I spent most of my practicum hours. This department is under the supervision of the Director of Clinical Nurse Specialists. There are 2 team lead nurse educators. One team lead nurse educator is responsible for clinical orientation, clinical competency, and clinical affiliations, while the other team lead nurse educator is responsible in overseeing inpatient professional development. All in all, Sinai Hospital has 8 nurse educators, including the team leads. Each nurse educator is assigned to a specialty unit responsible for professional development. Sinai Hospital's ERC was given a federal grant which they utilized for their Project Connect that covers the nursing residency program. There are 12 clinical coaches under Project Connect who directly oversee the nursing residency program, comprising of new graduate or new to specialty nurses. The nurse educators work collaboratively with the clinical nurse specialists, clinical coaches, and nurse outcome leaders. My practicum project is to update the competency checklist for the nurse educator. The need to update the current checklist was identified because of the following reasons. The ERC is undergoing hiring of the nurse educators to fill in open positions. Part of the orientation process is to ensure that the new hired nurse educator is competent and has the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to perform the job. Current nurse educator competency checklist was last updated in 2017. Another reason is that the job title has changed from nurse outcomes educator to the nurse educator, and some aspects in the job description has changed from changing of the job title. Upon revisiting of the current competency checklist for the nurse educator, it was determined that it is not consistent with the nurse educator's job description, not organized according to the roles and responsibilities, not measurable, not updated, not standardized, no clear-cut role delineation, and paper-based. The question is, how am I going to update the nurse educator competency checklist? First, I conducted a research of evidence-based literature using database CINAHL and Medline about the nurse educators, core competencies, scope and standards of practice, and roles and responsibilities. The next step was to research on available resources from regulatory boards and healthcare organizations. I was able to find 3 organizations that stipulate the core competencies and scope and standards of practice of the nurse educator. These are the World Health Organization, American Nurses Credentialing Center, and Association for Nursing Professional Development. The last step was to synthesize and integrate the findings from the first 2 steps to come up with the nurse educator's updated competency checklist. This matrix shows the crosswalk of findings about the nurse educator's roles and responsibilities from the 5 evidence-based literature that I searched and selected from CINAHL and Medline. On the upper hand box are the leadership, mentor, advocacy roles where the nurse educator demonstrates system management and leadership skills to create, maintain, and develop educational programs and shape the future of nursing. On the left lower hand box are the champion for scientific inquiry and evidence-based practice research, where the nurse educator demonstrates the use of best evidence to support principles of educational practice and use in solving clinical problems. On the right upper hand corner is the change agent role, where the nurse educator challenges the system of status quo to bring about a desired change. Lastly, on the right lower hand corner are the learning facilitator role and education responsibilities, where the nurse educator designs educational activities and programs, assesses learning needs, and revises programs, projects, or educational activities based on ongoing evaluation. This slide reflects the core competencies and standards of practice from the three organizations. World Health Organization identified core competencies with domains of learning and teaching. These are the following: curriculum and implementation, nursing practice, research and evidence, communication, collaboration and partnership, ethical, legal principles and professionalism, monitoring and evaluation, and management, leadership and advocacy. American Nurses Credentialing Center, or ANCC, conducted a role delineation study of the nurse educator. The study concluded the following responsibilities: career development responsibilities, education responsibilities, leadership responsibilities, program management responsibilities, and compliance and initiative responsibilities. Lastly, Association for Nursing Professional Development, with the approval and acknowledgement of American Nurses Association, published the scope and standards of practice for the nursing professional development practitioner or nurse educator. The competencies identified by ANPD are the following: learning facilitator, change agent, mentor, leader, champion for scientific inquiry, advocate for nursing specialty, and partner for practice transitions. Why is it important to determine the core competencies of the nurse educator? The purpose of the nurse educator competencies are the following: it is a basis for developing a competence-based curriculum, helps guide the educational preparation of nurse educators, ensures educational quality and accountability, and contributes to improving the provision of nursing care and outcomes of human service. The significance of developing core competencies for the nurse educator is that it enables the nurse educator to effectively contribute the attainment of high-quality education, production of effective, efficient, and skilled nurses who are able to respond to the health needs of the population they serve. World Health Organization stated that education is the starting point for change. The nurse educator plays a vital role to achieve that change through education. Improve nursing education and quality of nursing service. Nurse educators must practice, lead, and adapt to new evidence and changing needs of diverse population, and the utility of the competencies will bring about the desired changes. This slide shows what will be the content of the updated competency checklist of the nurse educator. Following the research process performed earlier, the nurse educator core competencies were further categorized, then integrated into the standards of practice and roles and responsibilities that were identified from the literature selected and the three health organizations. The categories are: first, the curriculum and implementation as a core competency. The role of a learning facilitator falls under this competency. Second is research and evidence as a core competency. The role of champion for scientific inquiry is categorized under this domain. Third is collaboration and partnership as a domain and core competency. Fourth is the ethical, legal, and professionalism domain and core competency. And fifth is the leadership domain and core competency. The change agent, mentor, and advocate roles are categorized under this domain. Benefits of updating the nurse educator competency checklist. First, utility of the nurse educator competency checklist will bring about the desired change and improve the provision of nursing care. Second, increase proficiency in assisting nurses to acquire knowledge, skills, and attitudes necessary to practice nursing effectively. Third, provide support, guidance, and performance expectations for the nurse educators. Fourth, serves as a basis for developing a competence-based curriculum expected of nurse educators. Fifth, nurse educator checklist is measurable, consistent with its job description, and reflects clear-cut role delineation. Last, moved from paper-based to electronic for easy access. This is the outcome of my project. The updated Nurse Educator Competency Checklist has 8 domains with corresponding core competencies, standards of practice, and roles and responsibilities. I shared the Nurse Educator Competency Checklist to the stakeholders on November 17. At this time, I am awaiting for their feedback and final approval by the Director of Clinical Nurse Specialist. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time.